Hello everyone, this is CJNovo992 and today we're back for another brand new video and it is transfer deadline day. Is everyone all excited or are we all drained and surfy constantly refreshing Rangers' Twitter feed all frickin' day waiting for them to announce the thing that everyone's news been getting announced all frickin' day? I think it's mostly the latter, but again it is transfer deadline day. There is madness going in the ins and the outs, but again all we do in every single upload is narrow in on a single topic, narrow in a single announcement. I know there's outs and all that as well, and we will touch on that when we do a recap transfer window, maybe uploaded tomorrow or the next day if you are very interested. But we're just going to break it off, ladies and gentlemen, narrow in on the biggest expenditure, the biggest signing in the transfer window, and a signing that is making me very, very nervous, very scared. And if you hear any clapping noises, then you go about looking at your house. It's the arse cheeks clenching for me, because it does make me very, very nervous. But before we go down that rabbit hole and just talk about the sheer depths of the horror and terrifying nature of this signing, it's time as always to chuck the old arms out and welcome the latest and newest signing, Mr. Youssef Chermiti. Please be good and dinna be what you've been the last couple of years. And I think if you're a regular viewer of this channel, you're sort of familiar now with the setup and the way we do these businesses, right? We sort of build a wee house round it and then we just dive in and we sit and talk about the player. We didn't really break down or bring in previous frustrations like the results, or if something's gone wrong off the park, we didn't bring it in to the videos. We very rarely break down fees, or if it's a loan with an option to buy or a loan with a mandatory clause, any of that stuff. We really never get into it because again, a guy can come here for 12 months and be sensational and then leave the football club, or we can have an obligation to buy. It can go badly wrong. We can spend money on a player and it turns out crap, or we can get a free signing that nobody wants and it ends up being brilliant. We try and push that away because it is a complete and utter coin flip. However, there will be a part of today's video where we really need to dive into that, as it's a major part of the story. But before we start talking around all that stuff and the moolah and the massive risk slash gamble this football club has just done right now, before we get there, let's talk about the player. And you know what that means by now? That means we need to go ahead and dive in to the player profile. Mr. Youssef Chermiti is a 21-year-old centre forward from Portugal that stands at 6'4", and you can't teach that. Total drinking water. And naturally, when you think 6'4" striker, you're probably building an absolute monster. You know what I mean? Somebody that's going to throw defenders about, some aerial demon that's going to climb out the back and outmuscle and manhandle everyone. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, that's not really the case. Yes, he does stand at 6'4", but again, he is on the slighter side, and I think that's something a lot of people need to realise when they're talking about this young lad. I think a lot of people are going down some very, very interesting avenues that might not be necessarily true. But again, on his earlier days and when he was actually able to play football and when he was given the opportunity to play some consistent football, one of the things that he was praised on early on in his young career was his ability when the ball did go up the air, and he was able to get it, as one of the few goals that he scored has been with his noggin at the back post, which was a brilliant finish. So that's a positive. There's no too many else, if I'm being honest with you. We're also talking about a 6'4" striker from Portugal that's not played football for over a year. More on that in a wee brief moment, but he is a big laddie, so naturally you might just be thinking about, we just bought a big lamppost here that's just going to stand in the box, throw his head at everyone that can't do anything with the football, and it looks like Bambi and Ice every time he tries to run. And to be fair, despite the frustrations that is going to be there regarding the signing and regarding this risk, that's not really fair to the player as well, because when he was bursting through the scenes, when he was playing for Sporting Lisbon, when he actually had a bit of good word of mouth, he was praised for his quick feet and his first touch for a big man, if you want to go ahead and say that. His ability to bring the ball down was originally one of the things that he was praised for very early on in his career, but somehow, some way, that's got lost in the old shuffle, as a lot of the things that he was praised heavily for a few years ago is apparently lacking and vanished and no there anymore. But again, he's still decent with the ball at his feet. He is still a big tall laddie and he can throw his head at everyone. So we might have a new kill streak if we're doing these long throws and set pieces. We might finally have somebody that can win a header. So that's a plus. But on the flip side of that, he's almost a cautionary tale regarding modern football and pulling trigger too early on young players and expecting them to be up this and expecting the world for them right away after initially breaking through and looking very, very promising. Because you could make an argument that this kid has become almost a forgotten flop to Everton and say, oh, I remember him, oh, that was a waste of money. I can't believe we've got rid of them. If you talk to Evertonians, imagine that's how they're going to feel about him. They'll probably not remember him, and then they'll say, oh, yeah, he wasn't very, very good. And that's a shame, ladies and gentlemen, because again, his word of mouth early on was good, but there's nothing there. There's nothing you can really get behind, as he struggled for game time, he struggled to stay fit, and he struggled when he's able to get on the park to actually impact the game. And again, he is a cautionary tale when you look at modern football, because we as Rangers fans know what it is to have young players touted to be this and spoken up to be this. They're going to be this, they're going to do that, but because of maybe the lack of game time, maybe because of injuries, they fall away and it slowly crumbles down to this, and then suddenly they're behind their development schedule, and then suddenly they look painfully average. You can make an argument the likes of Leon King and the Bailey Rice, for example, has fallen victim of that cycle. And to me, ladies and gentlemen, I would sit here and say, based on what I've been able to see, read and really dive into, Youssef is the exact same type of player, an exact same type of story. Spoke up to, barely played, being able to do none. Now just looks like he's almost stagnated and not improved and not kicked on in any freaking way. And look, I can imagine there will be people watching today's video, whether they're new subscribers or even regular viewers, sitting saying, this is unlike CJ to be negative. Normally finds it positive, and that's what he drives in these reaction videos. And that's a very fair counterpoint to have regarding this video so far, because I can imagine it's no very good listening. But what I would say about that is I always try and find the good, the bad and the ugly, and I try and bring these everything. And obviously when we speak about established players or kids that have been playing week in and week out and everything like that, there is normally more good than bad, and that's where most of these videos goes. But I always talk about if they've maybe moved to the wrong club and it's been playing poor, or they've got a bad injury history, or they've just been struggling at their previous club. We do talk about that as well, so I do try and bring a balanced video, but mostly tip in terms of the positive. However, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at Youssef's career, it does tip more in this direction, because there is very little good things actually that he's been able to do on the park. You know what I mean? He gets a nice word of mouth now and again, especially early on in his career, but look what Everton fans say about him. It's an absolute flop. You know what I mean? Wasting money, that's what they call him. Complete waste of money. Never looks like he could make it earlier. And now people would say it is a waste of money and it is a flop, and one of Kevin Theilwell's worst signings for Everton. Kevin's now up the road to Rangers, who's already on under fire for some of his signings. So Kevin's took his flop for Everton, possibly his worst signing in an Everton shirt, and brought him up the road to Rangers, spending a hell of a lot of money to go ahead to do it. So it is the ultimate gamble and the ultimate risk. But again, at the same time, I can't sit here and say to you that I didn't hope the kid's able to turn it round, because every fibre in my being, despite being nervous and scared regarding this signing, because there's a hell of a lot of evidence to suggest it's going to absolutely fail, even if there's a 0.1% chance that this kid could turn it around, start banging in goals and be the difference maker and key maker for our attack, I'm diving all in into that. And I hope Kevin, who is making this massive gamble and possibly risking his job again, by the way, you know, he risked it at Everton, he's risking it again on the exact same player. That belief that he has on this young man is completely right, and it does work out. And Youssef comes up the road and starts smashing goals in and is able to win us these games when we are chucking balls into books, when we are chasing set pieces, when we are needing late goals. Maybe what he brings to the table, which is completely different to what we've had recently at the club, could be the answer to the question that stopped us from winning these domestic games. But again, it is an incredible risk. But again, the kid's still 21, so can we sit here and say the kid's going to be a flop his entire freaking career? Nah, we can't. He's got an entire career in front of him, and now that he's up the road at Rangers, I hope that one's a successful one. But that's enough of the player profile, ladies and gentlemen. He's tall, he's right-footed, has actually a lot better close control than what you originally expect from a big laddie, and he can header everything in sight. That's it. You know what I mean? That's the positive. Let's move away from the player profile, get to some of the numbers and stats, which again is going to back up a lot of what we've talked about so far. Because as you can imagine, being labelled as a flop and a forgotten man forever, he's not played a single minute for them this season. You have to go back to the previous season to see any resemblance of game time for Everton, and in those games he played a total of 4 matches. matches, which you might say, wait a minute, Sage, you're talking about a young striker, 20, 21-year-old, getting 4 appearances in the Premier League. That's not too bad. That's a good apprenticeship. That's good experience for him. And that is a way to look at it. However, I would say not every one of those games were starts. In fact, none of them were starts. And in those 4 games that he played a total of 41 minutes. Didn't score, didn't assist, didn't do much of anything. It is also worth noting that season was heavily impacted by several niggles and several knocks and several injuries, as he spent the majority of the season out injured, you know what I mean? But again, young players, that can happen as you get bigger, stronger, they pick up there is some growing pains, and especially as a young laddie translating into that more physical league now, he's going to be picking up those stuff. But again, we've seen it before regarding young players having a lot of scary red marks in terms of their injury history. But it's worth noting as well, during his Evertonian career, not only has he really failed to make an impact on the park, he's very rarely been available to go ahead and play as well. Now again, we're no behind the scenes. We don't know the ins and outs of these injuries. There's a couple listed, there's a couple put down there. But all I would say, ladies and gentlemen, is maybe the kid also just wasn't getting selected to play because he has been really struggling. And I circle back to some of the players we've looked at previously in the past. For instance, Jack Butland was listed, 30 injuries regarding his Manchester United loan, and so many injuries when he wasn't selected for his previous clubs. And that's simply because he wasn't in the starting 11/18, so he just gets put down with a wee marker, unknown injury. So there might be a wee aspect to that, but again, they did pick up several knocks and several niggles last year for definite. But again, for the entirety of the season, I doubt he was injured for the entire freaking year. Surely no. But moving away from that and talking about the actual times he was able to get on the park, you have to go back to the previous season, and that's when he played 18 games in all competitions for Everton. Now, in that season, he did play the majority of those games playing in the Premier League, where he was living on scraps and chasing down lost causes and just being almost an afterthought as he was chucked on several games with a couple minutes here, couple minutes here, couple minutes there. But you might be sitting there thinking to yourself, right, he's had that, he's also had a couple wee games in the old cup competitions. Did he show a resemblance to anything? Knew he was given more appearances, more chances to impress. And honestly, this is where I wish I could sit here and say, aye, he looked really good, aye, he looked really sharp, aye, he done any of this and grabbed some attention. But there's nothing out there, ladies and gentlemen, to suggest that he offered anything despite the more appearances he was given that season. And that was his real first one at Everton. That again, everyone's saying, what have we brought in here? That led into last year, where again he only played 4 times, and then it led to this year, where he was playing 0 and completely played himself out of any Evertonian's plans, hopes and dreams, as his entire Everton career ends with him failing to score a single goal, ladies and gentlemen, or create a single chance for any of his teammates. And that's terrifying, ladies and gentlemen, especially when you consider the fact that when you rub away his Everton career, you need to go back to his previous club for the last time this kid, a centre forward that we are spending money on, has last scored a game in the top flight of frickin' football. You need to go back to the 7th of May 2023 for the last time your new striker scored a goal. That's right, the nerves are building. That's right, the terror is building, because we went ahead and brought in a striker that's allergic to scoring goals. Now, as you can probably imagine, there's no international experience besides under 18s, 19s, blah, 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 which we didn't pay attention to right here on the channel. So we have to go ahead and look at his entire footballing CV. As daft as it sounds, that again, being a 21-year-old, he's still got a hell of a lot of football in front of him, but the stats are the stats, you know what I mean? He's played 46 games at the top flight of football. He has scored 3 goals during that period, ladies and gentlemen, in which he has 2 assists to his name, if you want to look at that as well. Again, still early on when he was playing for Sporting, but you know what's the most damaging stat and the most terrifying stat is we've brought in a striker that's allergic to scoring goals, absolutely, but is also a striker that's been booked more than he's scored in his career, as somehow, some way he's picked up 9 yellow cards to balance out the 3 goals that he scored. Which does mean statistically he is now the worst centre forward we've ever broken down right here on this channel, and somehow, someway, the Sam Lammers record, who was previously the worst after having scored 2 goals for 4 consecutive years before Michael Beale went ahead and took that risk on him. The young Portuguese centre forward takes that mantle and is now again at the bottom of the heap. But all I would say about that is, again, where their frustration and nerves does build up, is we've looked at great guys with great CVs, with great goals to game, and they came here and they couldn't hit a barn door with a shotgun. They ran about like they were wearing a pair of Timbies. So what do you do before the football club or what you do after the football club means very, very little. All that matters is what you do when you're here. And again, young man, come up the road, grab it by the scruff of the neck and show us all your worth spending that money on. But with that being said, that's us done with the numbers and stats, that's us done with the player profile. So all we need to do is get to the old competition for places, which is so damn interesting, because again, I'm not a scout or anything like that. I'm not a professional, I never claim to be. I'm just a fan that looks in it and tries his best to try and decipher a lot of stuff that goes out there. We bring it together, and if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. It's just about the conversation. For me, when I look at the competition for places, when I put Bojan Majowski here and I put this kid here, there's not a single metric that's in this kid's favour over Bojan, barring his height and how much we've spent to bring him in to the football club. And Bojan's done a hell of a lot more. Bojan scored a hell of a lot more freaking goals. Bojan, in his worst month at Aberdeen, has scored more goals than this kid's ever scored in his freaking career. So it is one of the yins you sit and balance, you look at, it's no really making sense. And when this originally was floated as a loan idea, I didn't like it as a loan. I'll be honest, I looked into it and I went, what are we bringing him in for? Is that to replace Dessers on the old depth charts? Now we've actually spent money on him, and a lot of money on him, so surely he's going to be starting and surely he's going to get a lot of game time, unless it's a long look down the road that would build him up as the number 2 behind Bojan, toughen him up, strengthen him up, and then build him up that way. It could be some long-term storytelling if you want, but again, the old competition for places, who am I saying starting? If they're both fit and they're ready to go, Youssef or Bojan? Again, I've got to say Bojan the new, because I've seen what this kid can do in the Scottish football, and I've seen how he played in his debut versus Celtic, so he's got the jersey. And again, that underlines what an incredible gamble this is by the football club. But again, sometimes gambles work out. Gamble responsibly, kids. Don't get involved in it. It's genuinely worth it. Let the Rangers team do that. You know what I mean? Let the Rangers professionals, apparently, go ahead and take the gambles. But aye, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Competition for places. I can't see where he would start. I can't really see why we spent the money on him, if I'm being really honest. But again, I've looked at some really good players and I thought they were going to be really good for us, and they couldn't handle the weight of the jersey. Maybe this competition, maybe this league, maybe this style of football is what's needed to unleash this big man to be what he was first touted to be or flirted to be in his early days of his career. I hope so, ladies and gentlemen, and that's all we can do as a Rangers fan base, because the big man's up the road, the big man is right freaking here, and all we can hope is a very successful Rangers career, because if Youssef is a success, that means his team's a success, and that's at the end of the day all that freaking matters. And again, to peel up where we started and the sort of had been lumbering through today's video, the money that we're spending on him, if the fee is apparently correct, it now does mean he is the second most expensive player Rangers have ever signed in their history, behind the likes of Andre Flo, who was actually another big man who scored on his debut and actually had, I think he averaged a goal every 2 games or no, but again was labelled as a flop. So aye, good luck to the kid, that even if he's averaging a goal every 2 games, it might not be enough when you get this type of money spent on you. But I guess when you compare what Andre Flo got spent on him years ago to now and convert it, it would be a lot higher. But there he is in the history books, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm not really sure what we're gambling on. I'm sure there must be other strikers out there that's got a proven track history of scoring goals, you know what I mean? But there must be something in this kid that's way beyond us that we can see, and the guys that are professionals and the scouts can see something in him, and I just hope they are completely right, ladies and gentlemen. But aye, he's probably in to replace the likes of Dessers that scored 50 goals in his last 2 seasons. So good luck to the young man. So I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions, and maybe tell me how many times I've said gamble or risk in today's video, because I might have broke our old record. But that's it, that's the summary, that's how I feel regarding it. Very interested to know how you feel down in the old comment section. Well, that's where I want to go next. Have your say, let me know if you've seen them, let me know if you've seen any. Maybe you watch Everton games in the past, maybe there has been something I've missed and overlooked, but I've really tried to find and look underneath every single rock, and I can't see too much praising them, if I'm being brutally honest, especially over the last 2 and a bit years where there's no much actually wrote. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I've been CJ over 92. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. All the best, and bye bye.